Right, brilliant. Okay, so thanks a lot, guys, for joining. Thank you very much for coming back to one of our sessions. So for those that don't know who we are the Zim Property Investors Group. So essentially, we are just a community that are interested in property, predominantly have Zimbabweans, obviously, but it's not exclusive to Zimbabweans. So anyone who might want to be part of our community, please feel free to join us wherever you are from. So essentially, we're just looking to share some information. Majority of people in our platform are experienced property investors in different parts of the world, and we're just happy to share information and knowledge and resources, and we share opportunities for people to be able to accelerate their journeys in property. And as many of you are aware, the property world has different branches, and there's so many different strategies that people are going through, so many strategies that people are tackling essentially and implementing in their businesses. So we start to get to know each other, get to know what each of us are doing, and learn from each other if there's something that we want to be implementing as well that someone else has actually done. So for anyone who may be interested in being part of this community, please feel free to reach out. I'm just going to ask for anyone who wants to be part of the WhatsApp group, the Facebook group, feel free just to drop a message in the chat box here, and we will follow up and get you added into the groups. The more the merrier, the more of you guys who are part of it, the better it is for everyone. Okay, so today we have got Brian. We've got Brian Sango, who is kindly agreed to share some knowledge with us, share his time to come and share his story, to tell us about what he does and where he is investing, what strategies he's utilizing. I know some of you are already familiar with the different strategies, but personally, I'm quite curious on what these strategies and how they're implemented and how they are done in different countries as well. So he's investing in South Africa, and we're looking forward to having a conversation with him and getting to know what it is that he does. So the structure of this meeting is pretty much similar for those that have been here before. For those that haven't before, we're just going to have a conversation with Brian, ask a few questions, and have a detailed discussion about Brian and what it is that he does. And for anyone who might have any questions that they want to ask, please drop them in the chat. And as we go along or at the end of the meeting, we'll go through all the questions. And I know some of your questions might be generated by the answers that he'll come up with as we're talking. Just drop the question in there, and then at the end, I will go through the questions. Brian will kindly answer them, and then we'll take it from there. Hope that makes sense. And if anyone has got a question straight away, again, drop it in the chat. I'll just kindly ask for everyone to stay on mute so that we don't disturb the conversation, and we'll get it going. Okay, so Brian, thanks again, man. Really appreciate you taking your time to come and speak to us today.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited. I'm excited to get to know everyone who's on this panel and everyone who is part of your group, and see what work we could potentially do together moving forward. So yeah, let's do it.
Fabulous. Fabulous, fabulous. I like the fact that you've pointed out that potential work we can do together, because I can imagine most people right now are thinking, right, let's learn about what Brian is doing and let's see how we can be part of what he's doing and potentially work with him and see what we can do within our property journeys as well. So to start off with, if we just strip down everything about who Brian is right now and go back to the start and just ask for you to give us a bit of a background on who Brian is, where you're from, and how you then got to where you are at the moment, just briefly.
Okay. So yeah, my name is Brian Sango, originally from Zimbabwe. Bulawayo is where I grew up, born in Gweru. I've been in South Africa for about 13 years now. How I got here is actually a weird, funny story that will probably get you very shocked. But so I left Zimbabwe in 2009, having I was attending Masia Pambili College, which is where I was doing my A-levels. And just the financial challenges that had faced the country in 2008 and 2009 had really, I guess the family had taken quite a bit of a strain, both financially and just as a couple. And so being the firstborn son just sort of put me in a very difficult position, to be honest. And I then just told my mom that I was going to move to South Africa to seek better opportunities, which in turn resulted in being cut off in a way. So I got to South Africa with no place to call home or anywhere to go. I actually came all the way to Cape Town, lived on the street for about 3-4 days. I know it's absolutely bizarre. Don't even ask why I did that. But yeah, so I mean, it was also pride. I didn't want to go back. I didn't want to seem as a failure because I had a dream about Cape Town, having never been here. It was so vivid, and me looking at Table Mountain and everything. And I thought perhaps there's just something for me there. So fast forward to being there, I guess that's really when I started realizing the importance of people skills, the importance of just how you treat people around you and how you can leverage off each other. Because another stranger who had been seeing me for a couple of times is actually the one who said, listen, you seem to have a problem. This is the 4th day I'm seeing you here. Come live with me. And yeah, so I went to live with these guys in a room. They were from Harare as well. For those who are shown, Benama CD and all that stuff. Cool guys though. I learned a lot from them. And then I obviously started looking for jobs because the idea was to get a job, get a job, save up and pay for my studies, which is not as easy as you sometimes think it is, especially if you just go in the dark, you know? So I think my first job was as a parking marshal in Cape Town. I did that for a day and never went back. It was absolutely horrible. Thereafter, got a job as a cleaner in a restaurant, which is in turn where after some time, because of your people skills and also maybe I guess the ability to speak to people and everything, is how they then got me a position as a waiter. So now as a waiter and just selling food as well as I was doing, one of the biggest real estate franchises called Remax out in South Africa is actually the company that then set me down and said, listen, you seem to have a gift at selling, and we would like you to get into property, and we'll pay for your studies, we'll give you a place to stay, and you can really make a career out of this. And well, I think it took 3 meetings with them for them to fully convince me, because I thought maybe they'll ship me off to some country that I don't know. You know, it was a German couple. And yeah, I didn't know them from a bar of soap, so it was a bit tricky. And I took the opportunity. So that's why I even refer to myself as your property guy, because in all honesty, I mean, in as much as I rushed through that story as quickly as I could, you can simply tell that I didn't choose to do property. It actually just presented itself to me, and then I jumped at it. So now I've worked in all various parts of the real estate value chain. I mean, for the company I was with, it was marketing, advertising, you name it, up until to a point where I was obviously doing sales. We're doing luxury properties throughout Cape Town, which has stunning real estate, by the way. And then the disconnect for me, I guess, was just because I never necessarily got to engage with Black people, engage with my peers. It was always dealing with people from different backgrounds. And I wanted to use my skill set and expertise to actually positively impact those around me, which is why I started focusing on better entry points into property, which started off as the affordable housing market, whereby, you know, it's trying to get people to understand that purchasing of a property should be looked at as a business, has to have a strategy to it, and therefore, once you do that, you can actually unlock value and create wealth from property. So now that's when we went really into focusing on that. So I've been on my own. I run a business called Property Made Easy, which is an investment consultancy as well as a management company where we strategically source properties on behalf of investors in and outside South Africa and identify the best opportunities for them that tie in with whatever goals they have. About 90% of our clients are in countries like the UK, Canada, and so we basically are the door opener and touch point for them to play in any market within the country. And yeah, so we do that. We manage the property on their behalf, and then we just help them see the returns that they need to. We help them scale up. We facilitate their mortgage. You name it. Aside from Property Made Easy, I'm also part of a prop tech company called Property Inspect, which is also in the UK, because we actually went into, instead of designing our own mobile app and we went into a joint venture with a company that was already existing in the UK. It's called Inventory Base, for those who are familiar with maybe a number of prop tech platforms out there. What Inventory Base and Property Inspect are is an inspection software and mobile app that any entity uses to conduct any inspections on properties. So your move in, move out, check in, check out, pre-build inspection, snagging, you name it. So yeah, those are the two sort of company hats that I wear. And here I am.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Shocking, right?
I did not see that one coming, Brian.
I know.
Give us a heads up next time. Gosh.
I'll do that. I'll do that.
Wow, what a story, man. I did not actually picture that, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people who are listening in are thinking the same thing. That is.
I mean, I'm sure Tabo is shocked as well. I know Tabo and Google from our childhood days. So sometimes you go through certain phases in life and you try go through it behind closed doors and I think now over time I've just become intentional about sharing that story, because you never know who else is going through whatever challenge it may be, but that, it sometimes works out for the better. I mean, look, now I'm on platforms talking about property, and I actually had no intentions of doing property.
You just have no idea where life is going to take you, right?
Yeah.
Wow. That is absolutely amazing. Honestly, that is absolutely amazing. Just listening to your story, where you've come from, how you got to where you are, and how you actually using your story to flip the script essentially, and actually wanting to help others who may be going through something similar. That is just inspiring. 100%. That is something else. You really tripped me up there, Brian. Really tripped me up there. But
please don't cry. Not on this step. Don't cry.
I'll save that for later.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, you've taken the concept of humble beginnings to another level now, right? So you've just given us now a hint of what your story looks like. Like many people who are on the platform now, we come from a different country, and we find ourselves in a country where we weren't planning to come to start with, and trying to make something happen. And I know each person has their own struggles and how they actually got here, and you've kindly shared yours. How do you think that struggle has actually played a part in who you are today?
Oh, wow, great question. I think the struggle really, like I touched on earlier, really brought out seeing that you kind of are never an island on your own, and you are who you are because of people around you, and that way, my people skills have always been, or the ability to build relationships from nothing is something that I have come to identify as important, something that I hold dear. And even in property, when you want to do business with people, if you and I want to do a project together, and there's a big aspect of that requires us building a relationship. And so those humble beginnings taught me that. It also taught me that things do change. You got to work hard. You got to be determined. You have to strongly believe in whatever goal you have, regardless of what, if others around you don't see it. Because trust me, there were so many times I really could have given up, and there was absolutely nothing tangible that would have kept me going at that point, except the mere fact that I had this vision of a life I want to live in my head. So
Wow.
Faith.
That is something. I appreciate you answering that question. That's a great way of actually responding to it as well. And you've touched on the fact that you are who you are because of the people around you. And I've seen one of your posts as well on Instagram where you had umuntu ngabantu, which is essentially the same message.
Yeah.
And how do you think, so we get that you find that really important. How do you filter, and how do you kind of decide who you have around you?
Ooh. I guess I'm still learning on that, but how I filter, and that's true, because honestly, I mean, as my career has been thriving and thriving by the year, I've also got to a point where it's sometimes you get to a point where it's now a bit too much, you know, like the attention you're getting, or everyone that wants to do business with you, or that wants you to service whatever property interest they have in some aspect. So yeah, it's actually did get to a point where I think I was overly getting anxious by it. But how I filter is normally energies align. For me, it's all about energy. You know, you don't necessarily have to say yes or open your door to absolutely everyone that comes your way. And yeah, it's hard to explain as to how you identify energies, but there's just some form of synergy. And I think for me, one thing for sure is our ability as to be business focused, but to also allow ourselves into this room of vulnerability where we can just chat about life. Yeah. And, you know, that way you lessen expectation of perfection, because I don't believe in perfection. I think we all have our challenges. We all have our shortcomings here and there. And so, yeah, it's always been people that have this very synergized story that goes with them that I often find myself gelling more with than people that are of a different, I don't know, of a different journey. Yeah. And yeah. But in sales, you have to be diverse. So, I mean, I talk to people from all kinds of backgrounds. You talk to people that have all kinds of, you know, personalities and so I guess having done about 800 residential sales in my career, I had to perfect a way to always deal with whatever comes my way.
And whoever you actually
and
deal
how
with,
they do it, and some people you have to sound a little more stern. Some people you have to just listen to them because they just want to talk. You know, so it's diversity. It's just going, okay, who's this? Let's switch it up for them, and let's make them feel at home.
I hear that 100%. And it's a message that we tend to pass quite a lot in our community, because the majority of people who are in the community, they're all running their business portfolios, they're running their property businesses, and technically they don't necessarily need anyone. They could just focus on their business and just go. But it's good to see people who are established in the property world, who have reached a lot of where people think that's the goal, that's where I want to be, but they still take time to actually engage with everyone else. They're really conscious about the people around them. They're really conscious about creating a community of people that are facing the right direction, go in the right direction. And that's the important part, which I love how you've actually explained it there, where it's the synchronizing of energies. You need to understand that you guys have some sort of synergy going the same direction, because there's no point in, like you said, opening a door to everyone, because some of them or some people are not necessarily going your direction, and it's a loss of energy trying to pull everyone if they're going a different direction. So appreciate you answering that question the way that you did as well. So just a quick reminder for anyone else who's listening in at the moment, we're going to be taking questions at some point later on. So please just drop your questions in the comments box. I can see people dropping some information in. For anyone who has a question about what we're discussing so far, the amazing story that Brian has just shared so far, please feel free just to drop your questions in there and we'll get straight into it. Okay, so going back to what you discussed earlier, and you briefly touched on the fact that I think you said 90% of the people that you work with or investors are in the UK. Yeah, and a lot of people here listening in, and those that are going to be watching on YouTube, majority of them are in the UK as well. So the question is, what is it that you actually do for us? How does it actually work? If I wanted to be one of the investors that you work with, what does that mean? What do I do?
Okay, all right. So I mean, personally, I've been selling property since 2014, and 2014 for about 4 years was under a different company that I worked for before starting my own. And the only point at which we then when I shifted our focus and how we do things was when we went into COVID. So at the beginning of 2020, you obviously know challenges, everything was changing, people were restricted in terms of movement, and I was sitting in this lounge of mine panicking and thinking, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? How are we going to survive as a business? How will we actually be able to close any sales if people can't see the properties? Yes, obviously, because of this other prop tech involvement I have, we do have solutions. Okay, I'll get to that actually. So firstly, it was, how do I survive, right? How does the business survive with all these changes happening around us? And we had to cut down on certain costs like marketing, advertising, you name it, right? And I thought to myself, okay, maybe let me leverage off my social platforms that I have and my circles and perhaps try draw business from there, as opposed to the traditional, you market, you advertise, and you deal with a person that's coming in for the first time. And so once I did that, because of the economic challenges as well and concerns, and I suppose a lot of people outside of South Africa were trying to take that opportunity and run with it in terms of the exchange rates. I think we had round about March, April, when we just got into lockdown. And then I had I kid you not, I had about 2-3 guys that I started with who were all chartered accountants, 2 in Ginzi, and I've forgotten the other place where they were. And yeah, and we found some great deals for them. I did the sales, and I was just like, oh, thank God, these 3 will keep me afloat for the rest of the year in a way, I mean, we're in lockdown, let me keep my running expenses to the absolute minimum. And like wildfire, the word just spread about, okay, he can do this for you, and so what we essentially then got to a point was, I just thought, okay, I'm going to have Zoom calls Zoom consultations with people outside. I'm going to walk them through what the requirements are in terms of buying properties here. I'm going to hold their hand throughout the process so firstly, a market overview. I'm going to actually understand what it is that they want to do, how much they have, and maybe give them 3 or 4 scenarios that they could go into and see which one best suits them. But no, I won't just leave it at that, where I just help them sell the property. Why? Because if I then say this is a great investment and you are likely to get great returns of, say, a net yield of 11%, 12%, if I just do that and then they and then they own the property and someone else is managing it for them, or if they manage themselves and then they don't realize the returns I projected, they may think I misrepresented the sale. So what better way than to actually be hands-on with that exercise as well? So it kept on evolving day by day, to a point where even had to have an in-house maintenance team that can also do repairs at a reduced cost. And so 2019, I think I had done 2 years in the entire year. And just by this shift in what I was doing with no marketing whatsoever in 2020, with a year that was mostly the entire year was in lockdown, we could pretty much say that. I did 33 residential sales, coming from about 3 to, about 2-3 the previous year. And the following year, about 45 single-handedly again. So it's all just kept growing and growing and growing and growing. Each person I interact with would then bring someone else. I mean, a number of your Zim, Deloitte, chartered accountants, I think they have, probably similar to you guys, I think they have a WhatsApp group, because it's insane. They always just refer each other to me. And I'm like, how do you guys all know each other so well? So yeah, that's where it started. And then now I pretty much handle all their property related tasks in South Africa. So I've got guys, and in the affordable housing market, which is why it's easy to push numbers, is affordability. It's the average in like Johannesburg, where we do a lot of sales in, although I'm based in Cape Town, I've sold 800 properties without ever living in Joburg. And I guess it's because I leverage off my relationships with people, off technology, and so I pretty much can dominate any real estate market without necessarily living on the ground. I've never believed that I have to be there physically in order to impact whatever's going on there. I deviated a bit there, but what was I saying? Something around, yes, I wanted to highlight the fact that now we are just the touch point for everyone that wants to do what they need to do here, even as far as company registrations in South Africa, if they don't want to, hold properties in their personal capacities, and we then also set up companies for them and ensure that the rentals are paid into their various accounts. If they need to renovate, you name it. I mean, I've got a number of people now where we're looking at buying up office blocks and repurposing them to residential. Why? Because of this hybrid work model, a number of these office buildings are standing vacant. And some of my clients' appetite has now reached that point where they now want to go in for the bigger fish. And oh yes, the part I was saying when I just then went off topic was that the cool thing is most of these guys buy multiple properties from us. So you have to really do your due diligence each and every time, because you could lose out on a repeat client if you skip any necessary step, or if the trust aspect is lost, or if monies are mishandled, etc. So it's been a learning process day by day. I guess the ability that the flexibility that this whole thing allows me is I can chop and change my approach at any given time, which is great, as opposed to perhaps having to first pitch the idea to someone else and say, listen, I think we should now redirect our focus or whatsoever. So that's how I've been getting on till now.
Wow. Okay, that is brilliant. That is brilliant. So you can tell me, as a person who sat in the UK, I'm passionate about investing in South Africa, and you will basically do everything for me. In terms of, I want to purchase in my name or I want to purchase in a company, you can suggest the advantages and disadvantages of either, and you can also facilitate the company registration as well, as you've mentioned, right?
Yeah, correct. So
that is.
If you had to say I've got R1 million, I want to buy one apartment, I could then say, oh, okay, well, what's the reasoning behind that? Is it a property that you one day want to occupy? Is it purely for investment purposes? Are you trying to appeal to the short-term rental market a bit more than the long-term, etc.? And once I get a clear picture of that, then I perhaps come back and say, listen, maybe let's actually buy 2 properties at 500,000 each because of A, B, C, D. And then it's up at their discretion to move ahead with it. They normally say yes, because it makes sense. I mean, you're spreading your risk across, etc. But
Brilliant. Sorry. Brilliant. That's fabulous. I mean, speaking as one of the investors from outside who want to invest back home in however way, one of the greatest challenges, I don't want to be part of the process because I'm too far away, I'm not connected. So ideally, if I'm going to do that, it's either I shut down here and go there for 6 months, do the whole process to buy one property, which makes no sense, or I collaborate with someone who knows what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So it's good to hear that you've got those services, the hands-free element of, okay, I just wire across the funds, you do all the work that side, and we'll see what returns we can get from there. That's fantastic. Okay, so in terms of what you've just shared there, it's brilliant. And in most cases, whenever, I mean, you've mentioned the fact that you were and you still are using your sales skills essentially as you're going along. It's good to see the good side, right? This is what Brian and his team can actually do for you. And at the same time, there's challenges with any process, right? So are there any things that could go wrong that you have a plan of mitigating, or anything that you can sort of calm anyone down who's on this side, who's worried about, or what if that happens? What if that happens? What if this happens? Yeah.
No, that makes sense. I think one of the biggest concerns really from everyone that I normally engage with when they're looking to buy is the risk aspect of the tenancy itself. if the tenant defaults, what's going to happen, maintenance issues in the property. I'm so far away. What if they burn the place down, you name it. And because we have many years of expertise and also keeping a close eye on the entire operation on behalf of our clients, we definitely help reduce all these concerns for them, because our vetting process for our tenants, we understand the market much better than they would. We've been in that market segment quite a lot, so we know how to select, various tenants that we place into various units, and we conduct regular inspections from time to time, which I normally always make use of our app as well, which just makes the whole process much more easier and feasible for everyone to extract any data or reports that come with it. We do the maintenance on their behalf as well. So because of how I've set up our pricing and everything, most of these services come all in one sort of payment that they pay. So now, in terms of their maintenance, in a way, we're kind of doing it for free for them, because we are actually just handling whatever is happening here on their behalf. And the property is in their name, but trust me, I'm more an owner with them than yeah. So that way they sleep at night. It's more hassle-free for them. They just know that at a certain point of every month, their rental income or rental surplus goes into a bank account that they'll given or provided me with. And then we just ensure that all payments are done. And they're just sitting wherever they go on with their day-to-day jobs. And we just make sure that the property process goes well for them.
Fabulous. That sounds like fun.
Basically, expertise, area knowledge, and just understanding exactly the demographic of people in these areas that you work in is highly important, because there are a number of areas where people shy away from and term them high risk. But trust me, with the right intel, right knowledge, and right information, it'll actually be a high return area, not necessarily a high risk,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier on, where we have the concept of there's places where you can invest. This will work in this place. This will work in that place. Oh, yeah. I've lived in South Africa for 2 years. I know that area is not investable, blah, blah, blah. But things change so quickly. You may have lived in South Africa for 2 years, but that was 10 years ago. So ideally, if you want to invest in an area, you want to be collaborating with someone who knows the area, who is connected to people that are in the area and knows what investment area can produce what. I'm still under the belief that everywhere works, but there's certain strategies that work better in some areas, some work better in a different area.
I agree.
So you touched on, you help purchase the property, you then manage the property, you facilitate the whole process, tenants going in, going out, maintenance and all that. But you talked about affordable housing. From our side, it doesn't necessarily make too much sense because it's not a term that we use as a part of a strategy, so to speak. But when you say affordable houses, what does that mean exactly? And also, do you have other strategies that you implement with the properties that you purchase for people outside?
Okay, all right. So affordable housing, I know affordable is very relative, because something could be affordable to me and not necessarily someone else. But when you look at purchasing a property in South Africa, when you buy anything under 1.1 million, your transfer duty, what you call stamp duty in the UK, does not apply.
Right.
So it only starts coming into play for properties over that price bracket. It used to be 1 million for quite a while, and they just moved it up slightly recently. And because I'm dealing with a number of clients who maybe have limited funds or who definitely want to maximize on whatever it is that they're getting, I always use that as a benchmark to say, okay, affordable will therefore be anything that falls under that amount, because all we now have, the only additional cost that comes into play would be the legal cost, the attorney fees for conveyancing. And then properties over and above that, now they have other costs such as transfer duty. So that's that on affordable. You could just simplify it and say it's properties below R1 million, 1 million and under, just to give it a straight up answer. And then in terms of your other question, I mean, we do various strategies for clients. Personally, I've been doing a lot of buy to lets. So I've got quite a portfolio of properties where I buy and simply rent them out for returns monthly. Buy to flips, back to back flip is normally what I do, because I obviously don't have a lot of time on my hands because of all these other responsibilities I have. So I buy it, maybe paint it in very minimal work, but buy it and immediately put it back on the market. So just to eliminate holding costs completely. And with some of our clients, I will help them facilitate or map out a strategy and write out a plan for them when they want to do a buy, hold, and then flip, because they'll buy and maybe buy it under market value. So we can facilitate identifying houses under market value. Because of all these panels and whatever I sit on, I get access to all that information, properties that are just about to be repossessed by the banks, etc. So now I can approach various clients on their behalf and say, listen, this your property will soon be repossessed. Here are the options for you in terms of just making this a better process. And then our investor on the other end basically can now go and try get their hands onto that property. And now we document everything to say, listen, this is what market value is. This is what you can buy it for. If you do A, B, C, D, this is what you can put it back on the market for, and therefore this will be your profit. And some people really want to do that, but don't have the funds. So because we put it on paper and like into a nice written up presentation, I can even as much as rope a funding entity to say, listen, this is a guy who wants to do this with you. And if you then put the money in, this is what you'll get out. And yeah, so that's buy to flip, buy to hold. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, another project we've been doing quite a lot on now, simply because the South African retail and commercial spaces has changed quite a lot, is buy to repurpose. So clients are buying commercial, what used to be an office block, and we're turning those into residential apartments.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's a strategy that's getting common pretty much across the world, because the way that things are changing now, there's less requirement for offices, so to speak. People are working a lot more from home. So we've got a lot of commercial buildings that are just empty. So people are actually converting them into residential property. So it's good to know that this is something that's working over there as well. And can investors in the UK be part of that type of deal though?
Yeah, they can.
Yeah.
Mm.
Fabulous. Fabulous.
Oh, and student accommodation. I mean, student accommodation is still thriving, still doing well. So that's also a great approach.
That's good. That's good. I like the fact that you explained in detail about the concept of buy to flip, and we usually discuss here on the panel as well about how you make the money when you buy, not when you sell. It's when you buy. It's like the price that you buy it at is where the money is actually made.
Yeah.
And people focus a lot more about the the gross development value. How much is it going to be worth after you've done the work, and not focus a lot about how much are you actually buying it for. So you've touched on the fact that you've got the market value, and then you have below market value, and you can purchase it below market value for certain reasons. You've touched on the repossession, and it could be the state of the property, things that are hidden that you can't see straight away by looking at it. Any reason you can have to buy it below market value. And I'm loving the fact that you've actually pointed that out as a strategy that works there as well. Fabulous, fabulous. Now, at the start, you talked, you briefly went through and you mentioned buying property should be seen as a business.
Yeah.
And I actually really liked that. And I actually wrote it down and thought, I'm going to go deeper into this. Let's get into this one. What are you talking about when it comes to buying a property? You should look at that as a business.
Yeah, no, you definitely need to, you need to look at it as a business, because there are certain elements that you would focus on or need to focus on when you start a business and you're running a business. And I think property should be looked at the same way. It's a long-term sort of, yes, you might be buying with intentions to sell it soon, but still it's a commitment that you're making, which requires a lot of capital input from your side, and therefore you need to have all your ducks in a row. It's like you don't just wake up and marry someone you met last night, you know. And well, maybe some people do, but
I was gonna say
yeah, that's only in Vegas. But yeah, so pretty much now when you look at it as a business, what's the first thing you need to have? You need to have your business plan. And trust me, when you start asking yourself and tasking yourself to look at it as a business, you may actually realize that what you want and what you have available are not aligning, and therefore it might not be the best, you know. And you only arrive at that once you've looked at it as a business, because now you know what your long-term goals are. Now you've as much as decided how much you have to available to get this project off the ground. Now you're looking into how do you get it done, and yeah, now when you've done that, a lot of people, because, and why I say look at it as a business is because some people just buy properties because of what they heard from a friend. Like, oh, my friend is, everyone's buying out in Camps Bay, or everyone's buying in Johannesburg, and so because of that, I'm doing the same. I'm like, but wait a minute, do you have any idea why they're making those property decisions they're making, and how does that compare to your why? Oh no, I don't have a why, I just have money available. No, then let's slow down. Let's literally take this step by step. Why do you want to do this? You know, how much do you have? What would you like, what does the picture of your project look like 5 years from now? Is this a once-off thing you want to do? Is this an ongoing thing you want to do? Are you planning to retire? Is this inheritance that you got and you just want to splurge? But is there any way maybe that we could ensure that that money that you use makes you more money as you move on? You know, so now when you have these conversations with people, they tend to now fully grasp the fact that, okay, let me go back and give this more thought, and then they make more better calculated decisions from there on.
Wow, I think on the video that we're going to post on YouTube, I'm going to replay just the last 5 minutes there, because that is just fire upon fire. And I love to hear the same message that we try to portray said in the way that you've just said it. Is absolutely fantastic. And for anyone who is sort of like goes out to purchase property because someone else has just bought it, or yeah, it's worked for someone else, and you don't fully understand why you are doing it. Let's just go back to start with why. Why are you looking to do it? What are you trying to achieve 5-10 years down the line? And if you have a clear understanding of where you want to be 10 years in the line, it helps you make a decision on what you're doing now, because does it take you there, or is it going a completely different direction? Absolutely love that. Absolutely love that. I've just looked at the time and I thought you and me, Brian, could be talking for hours. We're going to need to go into the questions here. I appreciate what you've shared so far. And guys, thank you so much for being patient with us. And I'm hoping you feel the way that I feel about what Brian has just shared here, because it's just absolute fire. Right. So we're gonna go back to the top.
Forever, eh? So I tried to be as brief as possible. I can go on and on and on.
Yeah, you and me are gonna need to talk another time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So going back to the top, that's called Tenacity, brother. Well done. That's message from Miriam. I think this is to do with your story that you're sharing at the start. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. Look at you now. Absolutely fabulous. I agree with you.
Fabulous.
What a great story. Amazing. Great story. Heard it many times, but still inspiring. Thanks, Tavo. Very inspiring. Right. I think the first question is here from Google. Did you have any limiting beliefs, and how did you overcome them? What a question.
Yeah. I think the biggest limiting belief from the start was magnifying what I did not have as opposed to focusing on what I did have. And I'll actually tell you what I mean by that. So the real estate industry of South Africa, in order to go into the playing field, you need to have a car. It's strictly commission based. So you need to have some monies at your disposal that can carry you up until you make your first transaction. You need to have a cell phone, a laptop, and whatever. And having landed this opportunity, it doesn't mean that I became resourceful overnight. So those are things that I did not have. And that fast forward to why even as much as focused on properties in Johannesburg is because now I was doing all I can from behind my desk, applying my expertise and knowledge from behind my desk without necessarily having to be on the ground and doing what was required of me. And that was my way of moving past requirements. That limiting belief, I then turned it into an opportunity and focused on a market that would allow me to do so. And the other one would be things like, it's the perception that as a foreigner in a different country, you always tend to tell yourselves A, B, C, D is not possible, or it's going to be difficult. And yeah, it's just a mindset shift that's required in certain things. So I think briefly, that's how I'd answer that. Good.
Wow. The last bit that you touched on there really resonates with what we actually try to sort of like talk about and portray to a certain extent, especially for people that come from where we come from and coming into a different country. One of the limiting beliefs is it's not for us. It doesn't work for us. It only works for locals. It only works for a certain type of person. I'm not that type of person, so I'm not even going to try. And the whole idea of this is the more of us that show that it's possible, the more it changes everyone else's mindset on, oh, so if you can do it, why can't I? If your story is the same as mine and you still got there, why can't I? So I love that. I love that. Thanks a lot for sharing. Great question as well, Google. So thank you, Brian. Strong words from Shelley. I'm gonna have to sign off. I don't want but other duty calls. Really enjoying this. Good thing it's recorded. Hopefully I'll be back before sign off. That's from Michelle. Thanks, Michelle. Right, another question from Google. Please expand a bit more on the property strategies you focus on and how people from the UK, for example, can invest. What returns do you offer?
Okay, so yeah, our biggest performing asset class would definitely be our students. Well, property is ideal for student accommodation and closer to varsity, especially in Johannesburg inner city. Our clients get a net yield of about 12% and upwards, which is quite high compared to even your higher priced market segments. So yeah, that's been our core focus, and it really does sell itself, because even clients that do come with the need to buy, the fancier stuff, often say, oh no, let's actually buy these studio apartment living, which is, I'll give you an example. You're looking at about 40 square meters in size of a bachelor flat or one bedroom for about 250 to 300,000, with rentals of about 3,800 to 4,000 per month. And yeah, so now when you run the numbers, you're looking at about a net gross yields of about 16 to 18% and net yields of about 12 on average.
That is fabulous. Even from our side, those numbers themselves, they exceed what you would expect from a standard buy-to-let, so to speak. So that is fabulous. That is fabulous. I'm pretty sure a lot of people will want to know a lot more about this and want to get involved. So at some point, probably right at the end, we're going to ask you to share your details, if that's okay, Brian.
Yeah, sure.
Right. Tabo says, so you buy, refurb, rent out, and manage for the customers. In terms of the rental strategies, are these more on long-term basis, or it can be short-term, i.e. Airbnb, service accommodation?
Yeah, so it can be both. Can be short-term, it can be long-term. It just depends on the area. In some areas, short-term is more viable than long-term, and vice versa in other areas. So that's where we just apply our area knowledge, and we sort of help our clients make informed decisions based on that. My perception on people that weigh in too much on the short-term market is you'd rather get a property that appeals to both, to be honest, because you could, like when we got to a point where Airbnb came to a standstill, trust me, a number of people, especially in Cape Town, that had bought purely for short-term accommodation were seeing absolute flames. They were just going through the lot. And now when you try move some of those properties onto the long-term rental market, you obviously now need to be aware of what your returns could look like if you ever pushed into the long-term rental space, because some people only factor in what they're likely to make based on the short-term market. But I always say, okay, worst case scenario, how do we then restructure this strategy into something else? And what would that look like? Or is it then still viable to go for it based on that? You know, then we make a decision from that point.
Absolutely, 100%, 100%. And Tabo is our experienced person when it comes to due diligence and deal calculation. And this is something that he constantly talks about. Yes, you might want serviced accommodation as the main strategy, but think about, if this doesn't work, what's your plan B, plan C? Will they still work if you had to change strategy? So 100% agree with that. Thanks for pointing it out. Okay, next one is, please kindly share your social media handles, and I'm pretty sure you'll be okay to do that. Also, if you don't mind, your social media handles, or however way you'd like people to contact you, if you can share that with us, we will share it in the community as well with the video as well. So you can actually drop it in the chat if you're okay with that, and then we will share it again in the community when we share the video.
Perfect.
All right. Thanks, Bukosi. Kuku says, what's your minimum investment requirement? I was thinking this as well earlier on. You did talk about the affordable housing, which was the minimum of 1.25 before the stamp duty. But is there a minimum investment requirement for you? Or do you actually have to buy a house, or can you buy part of a house?
Yeah, good question. I suppose you could buy part of a house. If you guys are looking to buy as a group, you are allowed to buy as a group. You can buy up to 4 or 5 people can go into one title deed in their legal entities, or otherwise you could therefore register a PTY, a private limited company, and have multiple people be shareholders of that company. And it's in essence that way it allows all of you guys to chip in with whatever you have. And again, if that question is going into more along the lines of what's the absolute cheapest property we could find, then I'd say anything from about 200,000 going up would get you a good small investment with good returns. Yeah. Okay.
So about 200,000. I saw Tabo doing a conversion earlier on. If you could do us a conversion again, please, Tabo, or to what 200,000 rand means in pounds, please. Because
yeah,
to us, 200,
too long. You
200,000 200,000 is a huge amount if you were talking about just numbers as they are.
Yeah, no,
right.
Sure.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks for that. I think Tabo was actually trying to answer the question for you here, Kuku. I think it will depend on your pockets as an investor, unless you're asking what the entry point to buy a property in SA is. And I think you've kind of covered on that as well.
Asking about the entry point, yeah.
Right.
But anyway, Tabo, we're in different rooms. That's why we both logged in anyway. So yeah.
No worries, no worries. Tabo wants to be part of this. I'll interview you next time, Tabo. All right, fabulous. Thanks for the question, Kuku. So Tabo did a change here to say 1.1 million rands is 55,000 pounds, and that's the property that you would get for affordable housing. So thanks for that, Tabo, appreciated. Right, Trifocal Group, aka Villa, says for non-South African residents, can you buy an investment property without paying the required 50% deposit?
I'm assuming he's referring to mortgage, hey? Because by deposit he means the 50% cash deposit that's required, because as a non-South African you would get a loan to value of a maximum of 50%. So yeah, that's then it's very difficult to bypass that. We have, however, so what we've done in the past is, instead of, so you buy your first property cash, outright cash, right? And then we actually move that property into a PTY that you then register in South Africa. And now the rental incomes that the PTY is making over time is because we want to get your PTY to a point whereby we can actually use it as a financing vehicle. Why? Because I could get you a higher loan to value if I do it that way, as opposed to doing it in your non-South African citizen or resident capacity. So we could somewhat arrive at a point where you, in the future, now you're leveraging off your incomes that you're getting into your business, and you're leveraging off your real asset that you had already outright purchased that is owned by the business, and we can get you a higher loan to value, which means you would pay less. But it's very seldom that you will get to a point of them giving you 100% financing, even if you do that. We could get it to about 75, which is not bad. So yeah, 75% is doable.
The standard is the general buy-to-let loan to value in the UK is 75 anyway. So for a buy-to-let, you'd be expecting to raise 25% deposit. So are you saying that if I could raise, like Tal was pointed out, 55,000, purchase a property outright, put it in what you're classing as a PTY, private limited company local, the rental that can build in a certain period of time, can that actually potentially allow me to purchase a property that is 3-4 times more than that one to get a 75% loan to value?
Yeah.
So that would be a smarter move to make, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Right.
Yes, spot on. Yes, spot on.
Brilliant. That's a great question there, Villa. Thanks for bringing that up. Question from Mugo. What are some of the challenges or barriers for foreigners investing in South Africa?
Foreigners investing in SA from outside and wanting to make use of the mortgage facility in South Africa. The biggest challenge there is, at the moment, South African banks are not looking at self-employed individuals. So they just outright decline. And of course, a number of my clientele in Zimbabwe, it's people that are self-employed, and so that we have struggled, and yeah, it's still not being done. I'd say that's the biggest one that came off straight from the top of my head. And then let's see, what else could I highlight? Challenges, barriers for foreigners in investing in SA property market. It's very open. Yeah, so I would say the only challenge, especially for mortgage applications, is whether you're self-employed or employed by a company. And also, I've also had a client recently who's struggling because he's employed on a contract basis. I think they renew it every 6 months, and all the banks said no, he needs to have a longer term contract or permanent employment contract for them to consider. Aside from that, if you're buying outright cash, then even as a foreigner or someone based outside of SA, you just purely need your copy of passport. You don't even have to be in the country physically. You don't have to have a permit or ID, and you just purely need your proof of residence wherever you stay. So it's very, very simple. And then you just wire your funds to the attorneys that are dealing with that transfer. The funds are held in there, and when the property registers, it's registered into your personal capacity with your passport number as your ID number. And yeah, then you can continue growing your portfolio like that.
Brilliant. It sounds like that's the other advantage of just purchasing a property outright cash to start
with. Yeah, the red tape is, it's much quicker. Yeah.
No, that's brilliant. That is brilliant. Thanks for that question, Mugo. Appreciate the response as well, Brian. Kuku says, Charlene says fire emoji. I felt the same way, Charlene. Thanks. Dropping gems, selling 800 properties is still playing in my head. Well done. That is major, by the way. That is no easy, especially in the timeline that you're talking about. You would expect anyone selling 800 properties to be telling you they've been doing this for the past 20 years.
Yeah.
In sort of like in retrospect, really looking at this, you're still pretty much of a newbie looking at the time frame of what you've actually done. So with what you've achieved, that is absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. So Miriam says history has proven that success starts in diaspora. Location is not a limitation. Love that. Absolutely. So Brian, you've shared your contact details. Fabulous. For anyone who needs the contact details there in the chat box. We'll also share that in the group as well for anyone who's watching on YouTube now. What's on the horizon for Mr. Sango with the world likely entering a global recession in the near future?
Oh, geez, that one. Yeah, I didn't expect that. That one hit me.
That's Moko, the economic person. He's the one who
Yeah.
tells us what's happening, where he knows the dates of exactly when it's going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, we're definitely keeping an eye on things just to see how it plays out. One thing about the world that we live in, people always they'll always need food to eat and a place to stay. And I think that's why even our affordable housing space, which is, like I said, the properties under $1 million, we're doing well. We didn't have any defaults in rentals, even in lockdown, because for lack of a better word or term, you're sort of at the bottom of, anything below that is just not ideal. You end up maybe in the townships, and a number of these people had moved away from the townships because of xenophobia, and so you sort of have people that don't want to compromise and need to keep that place to stay, one. And then you've got this huge influx of people that will often downgrade whenever they lose their jobs, whenever they're going through a divorce, whenever this and that and that. So it almost leaves us with so much turnaround in that little affordable. We identify that space where the demand is high from tenants, from buyers, and the wheel therefore just keeps turning. I mean, some of my properties, in all honesty, if a property takes me longer than 5 days to sell, then there's a huge problem with it. It's normally quick 48 hours once they say, listen, we've got an opportunity here. I run the numbers, I do my due diligence. I mean, when you do it so much over time, even just the name of a building, you already know that, okay, at that price, it's definitely viable. And if it's anything over that, then we're not going to take it. And yeah, so opportunities with the problems that we keep facing in the world, it definitely opens up eyes to some either new opportunities that have just been there and now are much more feasible to run for. So yeah, I mean, we can have more chats around this and see. We certainly as a company are ready to get busy. We've got a few relationships with other entities in the UK. So some of our high net individuals, high net clients buy UK properties as well to diversify their portfolios. And then we just do the introduction and. So we're always keen for new opportunities, new strategies, new collaborations on projects. So we can always, I mean, anyone else that wants to have a one-on-one discussion around what we want to do or intend to do, then yeah, we can definitely chat.
That is
without putting all my cards on the table, I would say yeah.
You'll put them on the one-to-one conversation.
On the one-to-one.
No, that's fabulous. I think it's a great way of the way that you've put it there. Kind of like your market is there in the middle. Just high enough for someone who's trying to reach out to the next level. And also it's a safety net for anyone who might drop for whatever reason. So it's to a certain extent recession proof, right? Because you're always going to have demand in that area.
True, 100%.
That is brilliant. That is a brilliant strategy. Thanks for the question, Mugo. Brilliant. And Tawos kindly converted 200,000 rands is 10 grand. Okay, that's a better number to think about. 10,000.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, fabulous. Kuku says earlier you mentioned going into real estate came to you, which was great. What did you want before that when you went to South Africa? That's question one. Did you get a mentor or coach to shift your mindset to take the property further? Or did you read any books or any that you can recommend?
Okay. So I wanted to do pharmacy. That was the dream. Biotechnology was my plan B. So it was definitely nothing close to property. It was more scientific. But I love what I do, and I could not even imagine myself doing anything else outside of property or outside of the people element. You definitely needed guidance and mentoring along the way from different people as well here and there. I think Rich Dad, Poor Dad was one of the books that just opened up my eyes to a lot of things, which I read a couple of years back. So that was definitely a good read. And everything else is always, I watch a lot of YouTube videos. I listen to a lot of investors' experiences. I mean, even I only started, I mean, I used to read about it, talk to people about it. I used to encourage it for my clients to do the buy to flip strategy, but I was always so afraid to do it myself that you will not believe that I only started doing it in my personal capacity like 2 years back. So it's all about, once the more you speak to people, the more you understand the challenges that they went through, etc., then the easier it is for you to also arrive at a more precise picture.
100%. Now that absolutely makes sense. And I'm trying to picture you wearing a white coat doing something to do with bio. It doesn't make sense now that we know you as the property guy. So now we're glad you actually joined the property world, because your knowledge and what you've just shared so far alone is quite revolutionary. So appreciate that. Shelley's question is, are you thinking to invest back home? Now we're talking about Zim.
Yeah, it's a thought I've had. I've been speaking to a few people just to see whether it's at all something to consider. In the long term, yes, but nothing immediately, no. I guess I'm using this time just to speak to more and more people and more of my clients that are based in Zim to get a better understanding of that market. I mean, I left as an 18-year-old, so there was a lot around me that I probably was just oblivious to. And now at 31, and you're still trying to think of, okay, how is Zim, by the way? You know, my thoughts of, like you mentioned earlier, you know, my thoughts of Zim 8-9 years ago to what it is now are totally in the dark. So someone would have to hold my hand as well to say, Brian, this is what you need to do. And so it's a risk that I haven't really been ready to take as yet. And I thought, let me just use this time to do my research, speak to people and hear what it is that they say works there. Yeah.
I hear that. Absolutely, 100%. And I think that's a fear for most people. We're all deep down patriotic. We want to do things to help our country. We want to utilize our skills to do what we can for it. And the nervousness is things have changed so much. The way things work, the way things happen there, the way transactions work, it's so different to what we're used to. So it's a lot of thought that has to go into that. And I understand where you're coming from, indeed. My Tanya is asking a similar question. Is there anything going on in Zim, which you've kind of slightly touched on, but do you know of anything that's actually going on in Zim that people can follow up on?
To be honest, no. No. I'll be very honest. No.
Brilliant. Fair enough.
South
fair
Africa,
enough.
yes. No, you could ask me about a tree in Mpumalanga, yeah, and I would know it. But yeah, I always like saying, you know, I know what I know and I know what I don't know. So no, I'm not.
And that's one of the things that you don't know. You don't know.
Yeah, no, Zim, no.
No, fair enough. I think that's a fair point indeed. A lot of us feel the same way. And there are some people in the group, there's some people in the group that are involved in some investment opportunities in Zimbabwe. The whole concept of Airbnb. So if you want to bring that question into the WhatsApp group and have a chat with people that are doing it, and perhaps actually get some information on that, that would be great. That would be fantastic. Right. Okay. I'm not seeing any more questions here. And thanks a lot, guys, for the questions that you've been asking. And thanks, Brian, for the responses. That are absolutely brilliant. Really appreciate that. Really appreciate that. I personally see why they call you the property guy, because you've touched on so many different aspects of the property world, essentially, and how you can actually help so many different people in different aspects. So thank you very much for sharing that. I'm seeing a question from Mai Tanya. How do we join the WhatsApp group? Please feel free to drop me your name and number. Some of the people have already done that. Direct messages on the chats here. Just drop me your name and your phone number. I will reach out to you and we'll get you added in. That will be no problem whatsoever. Okay, brilliant, brilliant. Okay, so these sessions, we planned them from 5:30 to 7 o'clock, guys, and we've gone through the story with Brian, and we've heard quite a lot of inspirational quotes and inspirational parts of his story. And I would recommend for even for people that are watching this, when the video is been posted in, watch it again, because there's some really good gems that have been shared here that you want to be looking out for. And for anyone who's interested in investing in South Africa, Brian is your guy. We've got the contact details. Feel free to reach out, have conversations. Just a quick question for you then, Brian. You've got the opportunity for investors who are in the UK to invest with you and actually do, you do all the work over there and have returns. Do you have any investors who are in South Africa who are looking to invest in the UK?
Yes, I do.
Okay, fabulous. That's another conversation that we can have, and potentially for anyone who's built a portfolio here, something similar to what Brian is doing, can potentially collaborate and see if there's any investors that are willing to actually put some funds in properties here. So awesome story, Brian. You've got an awesome story. I was not ready for that. Now I really appreciate you sharing that. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope the guys that are listening in have enjoyed it too. And again, really appreciate the time that you spent with us and all the knowledge that you've shared. Hopefully we can bother you at some point again in the future to come back and share your story again. As our community grows, more people will want to actually meet you as well. So thank you again, brother. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. And yes, looking forward to future collaborations, discussions. I think I'll actually even love to join your group. I mean, just to get some knowledge from different people and see what's going on there. So yeah, I'd be open to that.
That would be fabulous. That would be absolutely fabulous. We'll gladly have you in there. So thank you very much, Brian. Thanks guys for those that are listening in now who are part of the core, and those that are watching on YouTube. If there's anything that you might need from this conversation from Brian, please feel free to reach out. For anyone who wants to join the platform, don't hesitate to reach out. The more of us who are in there sharing different experiences, the merrier and the better we will all learn. So I hope you all have a fabulous Sunday evening. And this is the time that I kindly ask anyone and everyone who is comfortable with it to unmute and wish each other a fabulous week. And it's actually a fabulous new month as well, starting from tomorrow. So feel free to unmute yourselves, guys.